all take-or-pay contracts and imposing a moratorium on the signing of new agreements in the energy sector, with a view to establishing a managed transition to overcome the unsustainable excess supply situation that continues to pose grave risks to the country's economic progress. Consequently, the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Energy on 26 August 2019 hosted Ghana's independent power producers and gas suppliers at the Stakeholder Forum, during which government reiterated the urgent need for these energy sector interventions and outlined government's intended approach to implementing them. As well, government invited our IPPs and gas suppliers to partner and collaborate with government in this crucial exercise how government seeks a thoughtful and managed transition from the onerous take-or-pay paradigm towards a balanced contractual relationship capable of delivering fair, enduring energy solutions that reflect reality and offer long-term sustainability for power purchase agreements and gas supply agreements in Ghana. Subsequently, on October 28, 2019, government inaugurated a steering committee under the Energy Sector Recovery Task Force, whose purpose it is to take responsibility for the collaborative bilateral consultation process between government and each independent power producer and gas supplier, designed to help government and its energy sector partners achieve a managed transition towards more balanced long-term relationship and sustainable energy partnership. Mr. Speaker, this collaborative bilateral consultation process, which has so far been welcomed by the investor community, will provide a forum for stakeholders to contribute to Ghana's energy strategy, which is fundamental to the country's industrialization and sustainable growth. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to inform this August House that government negotiating teams have been constituted and are now close to completing the first round of bilateral consultation meetings with several IPPs as well as project sponsors. Significantly, government views these collaborative bilateral consultations as an essential exercise which not only limits downside risk to investors over the medium to long term, but also demonstrates government's full commitment to progressively restoring confidence in the energy sector, as well as across other key sectors in our rapidly growing economy. Mr. Speaker, it is also worth highlighting that in line with these energy sector interventions and to ensure the success of the bilateral consultation process, government, in line with the decision taken in July mid-year, has formally instructed sector ministry, department, and agencies as follows: to suspend all ongoing negotiations on PPAs and GSAs, LNG gas and purchase agreements, or any other long-term take-or-pay contracts for power, gas, until further notice. The government has placed a complete moratorium on the signing of new PPAs, GSAs, and put call option agreements, and hereby instructs ECG, GMPC, GNGC, and VRA to abstain from entering into any new PPAs, GSAs, LNG SPAs, long-term take-or-pay contracts, and POs until discussions with Ministry of Energy and Ministry of Finance. That all future PPAs and GSAs, LNG, SPAs, and long-term take-or-pay contracts shall be subject to competitive and transparent procurement procedures, and government will henceforth not entertain or accept any unsolicited proposal. Government intends to enforce these interventions and expects strict compliance by all affected MDAs and potential investors. In this regard, government will notify MDAs on a case-by-case basis of any applicable exceptions with regard to the objectives of the Energy Sector Recovery Program, a roadmap jointly developed by the Government of Ghana and the World Bank, which delineates immediate, near-term, and medium-term actions needed to achieve government aim of bringing the sector into balance in the medium term. Mr. Speaker, we expect this to be a gradual but challenging process with many potential complexities. However, government remains undeterred and will spare no effort to ensure that it is fully prepared financially, organizationally, and with the requisite technical wherewithal to confront these challenges head-on. Additionally, as part of the rationalization process, The car power ship has been relocated to the western region and retrofitted to use gas instead of HFO. Car power ship will thus become the key off-taker for the take-or-pay Sankofa gas. This will generate substantial savings for government. Indeed, unlike the past, this government recognizes that a focused, disciplined, and coordinated approach is required to resolve the substantial challenges in the energy sector. In this regard, government aims through this consultation process to, among others, create a standardized, sustainable framework for future PPA and GCA contracting, which all new IPPs and gas suppliers who wish to participate in Ghana's energy sector will be required to adopt in the future. Truly, Mr. Speaker, the staggering cost and negative macro-fiscal impact of Ghana's excess power and gas supply problem necessitates the full force and uninterrupted focus of government in the execution of this all-important exercise. And Mr. Speaker, this is precisely what we intend to do. Mr. Speaker, as we all know, on July 30th, 2019, government suspended the Power Distribution Service, PDS concession, following government detection of fundamental and material breaches of PDS's obligation in the provision of payment securities for the transaction and related matters. After further investigation and extensive consultation with relevant stakeholders, government on October 19, 2019 announced its decision to terminate the PDS concession. Regardless, Ghana is fully committed to private sector participation in ECG and is focused on moving forward with urgency to find a suitable replacement for the PDS arrangements. Moreover, we are prepared to review the transaction structure and indeed recognize the need to improve significantly the management of ECG by bringing in world-class private sector expertise and attracting adequate private capital. Mr. Speaker, considering ECG's current distribution system losses of 24%, comprising 13% commercial and 11% technical losses, government is truly motivated by the urgent need to reduce these losses and improve service quality through the effective deployment of modern technology and world-class technical expertise with a view to creating a financially viable power distribution sector that is sufficiently equipped to meet the current and future needs of Ghanaian households and businesses. Mr. Speaker, as we crystallize plans for the future of ECG, government is also enthused by the critical need to ensure the transfer of skills with a view to building local capacity as well as introducing international best practices to enhance the operational, technical, commercial, and financial wherewithal of our national electricity distribution utility. Against this backdrop, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that government intends to initiate an accelerated tender process to select a new private partner for ECG in the coming months. It is indeed government's intention to make relevant adjustments to enhance the existing bid documents and tailor the process to optimize the selection from companies having a track record of managing and operating a comparable utility so as to achieve fair, transparent, and expeditious disclosure of the transaction. Mr. Speaker, we cannot overstate the importance of learning from past mistakes if we are to make sound decisions going forward. However, we have no doubt that the well-executed partnership between ECG and the right technical and financial partners will certainly improve our distribution capabilities and enhance end-user experiences. In this regard, heightened scrutiny will be brought to bear in the design and implementation of the financial and technical evaluation criteria to ensure that interested bidders know they have credibility and extensive experience in operating and managing a comparable electricity utility, but also possess financial wherewithal to make the requisite investment in ECG to achieve significant reductions in technical and commercial losses, as well as drive operational efficiency to deliver sustained service reliability for the benefit of all Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, whilst restoring private sector participation in the management, operations, and financing of the required investment in ECG's distribution assets, government will make every effort to avoid the pitfalls that the PDS concession encountered and institute broad Ghanaian institutional participation, as well as demonstrate local equity participation with an eventual listing on the Ghana Stock Exchange. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, let me be clear that the decisions we take in respect of this transaction will continue to affirm our time-honored reputation as a business-friendly nation that respects the rule of law and expects to remain an attractive destination for foreign direct investment. Mr. Speaker, while on the subject, Ghana remains committed to its relationship with the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Indeed, government fully respects and is committed to the essential principles underlying the relationship between the MCC and the government of Ghana, as well as the overall bilateral relationship between Ghana and the United States. Moreover, government remains committed to the energy sector reforms as envisioned under both the MCC Compact and the Energy Sector Recovery Program developed with the support of the World Bank. Financial services. Mr. Speaker, following the successful completion of reforms in the banking sector, which began in August 2017 and ended in January 2019, we now have a more resilient sector, well positioned to support the economic growth agenda of the government. Banks are beginning to refocus on their core mandate of financial intermediation based on their stronger capital base after the recent completion of the recapitalization exercise. A well-capitalized, solvent, liquid, and profitable and resilient banking sector has emerged with improved financial soundness indicators in line with expectations. Even with fewer banks, asset growth within the banking sector in 2019 continues to be robust, underpinned by sustained growth in deposits and higher capital levels, while credit has continued to recover compared to the same period last year. Mr. Speaker, at the start of the reform in August 2017, total assets were 81.1 million for a sector that had 36 banks, and 2 years after the reform process started, total assets have increased to 115.2 billion at the end of August 2019, with only 23 banks. In the same direction, total deposits have improved from 55.7 billion to 76 billion over the same comparative period, reflecting a stronger deposit base owing to more trust and confidence in the banking sector with fewer but stronger banks. Banks' profitability has also been greatly enhanced with a significant pickup in profits after tax in 2019 compared to the previous year. The sector's solvency remains strong, with the capital adequacy ratio, even under the more stringent capital requirements directive under the Basel II and III framework, well above the new regulatory minimum of 13%. Mr. Speaker, similar to the banking sector and prior to the reforms, the specialized deposit institutions was plagued with acute liquidity and insolvency challenges. This continued existence posed severe risk to the stability of the financial system and to depositors. As a result, in 2 separate cleanup exercises, the licenses of these insolvent institutions were revoked in order to curtail a spillover of these weaknesses to other sectors of the financial industry. Mr. Speaker, insolvent specialized deposit institutions comprising 23 savings and loans and finance houses, companies, and 347 microfinance companies and non-bank financial institutions comprising 39 microcredit companies, 1 dormant leasing company, and 1 dormant remittance company were also resolved in May and August 2019, respectively, to safeguard the financial system against potential contagion and weaknesses in the SDI sector, which threatened to erode the gains made in the banking sector. It is important to note, Mr. Speaker, that although the cleanup exercises were completed quite recently, there are already indicators of improved performance within the SDI sector, evidenced by improved capital positions, profitability, management efficiency, and liquidity within the sector. The completion of reforms within the banks and SDI industry in August 2019 was timely and paved the way for the organization of the Ghana Deposit Protection Scheme in December 2019. The scheme will protect the national budget from costs arising from the banking sector failure, if that were even to happen in the future, and ensure that going forward, all deposited funds are insured against bank and SDI failures. This scheme, supplemented by effective regulation and supervision by the Bank of Ghana and the work of the Financial Stability Council, will go a long way to make our financial system more resilient and supportive of our efforts to foster inclusive socio-economic growth. The central bank will continue to pursue policies and strengthen supervision to ensure that the banking sector remains well capitalized, solvent, liquid, and profitable, and to also ensure that significant gains recorded in the aftermath of the reforms and recapitalization exercise are locked in. Credit risk management practices and loan recovery efforts will be stepped up to minimize overall risk in the banking sector. Mr. Speaker, over the past 2 years, the management of the Securities and Exchange Commission has worked on various reforms and appraised the state of operators in the industry. In line with the powers invested in the Commission under Act 929, Sections 3 and 122, the Commission revoked the licenses of 53 fund management companies on Friday, 8 November 2019. Of these firms, 21 have ceased operation, with the remaining 32 in various states of distress and or regulatory non-compliance before the revocation. Through this firm and decisive intervention, the Commission will preserve the investment of over 77,000 retail investors and over 4,700 institutional investors. The investment portfolio of the affected firms amounted to 8 billion Ghana cedis, of which 2.4 billion, 30%, was invested in treasury bills, banks, and listed equities. The actions affected 249 licensed representatives. This exercise seeks to protect investors, restore transparency, and introduce greater accountability whilst instilling higher ethical standards through improvements of the licensing and supervisory framework. Mr. Speaker, the intervention by government to save depositors and investors whose funds were locked up with failed financial institutions has been very costly. In 2017 and 2018, government spent 11.7 billion to safeguard the deposits held by universal banks that were resolved by Bank of Ghana, and to set up the Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited. These amounts were mainly through the issuance of government debt to both GCB Bank and CBG. This year, government had to again intervene to provide relief to depositors when the Bank of Ghana revoked the license of 347 microfinance institutions, 15 savings and loans, and 8 finance houses. The total bailout cost estimate for this exercise was 2.4 billion. Mr. Speaker, the Bank of Ghana again provided the cash for this. Mr. Speaker, the Securities and Exchange Commission also revoked the license of 53 asset management companies that were distressed, with an estimated fiscal cost to protect investors of 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. In addition, government also provided bridge funding of up to 800 million cedis for Ghana Amalgamated Trust to enable it to invest in 4 indigenous banks that were struggling to meet the minimum capital requirement of 400 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, these interventions were timely to ensure that we safeguard the financial system, provided relief to many families and businesses, as well as to protect jobs, local interests in the financial system. Mr. Speaker, it is important to state that government has not under any circumstances intentionally collapsed any financial institution. These institutions, Mr. Speaker, were insolvent and or distressed as a result of their own actions, and their respective regulators stepped in to intervene and to save over 4 million depositors and investors. Our commitment, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that we provide relief to many of the victims. The total estimated call for fiscal intervention, excluding interest payments from 2017 to 2019, is estimated at 16.4 billion Ghana cedis, about 5% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, we acknowledge Mr. Speaker, we acknowledge the pain and distress that has befallen some depositors and investors, including pensioners, market women, churches, hospitals, etc., who place their confidence in these financial institutions. The ongoing prosecutions would ensure that all those coupled, as well as the negligent officials of the regulators, will face justice as soon as possible. With this cleanup, the financial sector is now sanitized and the public should have confidence in the sector. Ghana Amalgamated Trust. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Amalgamated Trust PLC was set up in December 2018 as an urgent policy response to help support 5 indigenous banks: Agricultural Development ADB Bank, Omni Basic, Prudential Bank, Universal Bank, Merchant Bank, and National Investment Bank, NIB, as they were unable to raise equity to meet Bank of Ghana's new mandatory minimum capital of 400 million by December 31, 2018. All the insolvent banks whose licenses were revoked by BOG were indigenous banks, which had a contagious effect on the remaining indigenous banks, making it hard for them to raise additional capital. To ensure, Mr. Speaker, that indigenous sponsorship in the banking industry is protected and over 5,400 direct jobs and 12,000 direct jobs are kept, the government set up GATT and announced a major intervention to provide a sovereign guarantee of up to 2 billion to GATT as a backstop to encourage investors to support our local banks. Government successfully got the approval from Parliament to issue a sovereign guarantee for GATT to enable it to issue bonds and invest equity in the participating banks. Mr. Speaker, the process was, however, affected by a legal suit challenging the debt instrument to be issued by GATT for equity investment in the participating bank. In response, the legal advisors, Bank of Ghana, Securities and Exchange Commission, and the MPRA advised the following: to enable a successful capitalization of the banks nonetheless, to meet the social objectives of the government. Replacement of original bond framework for GATT with a preference share framework for investors. Initial bridge capitalization of 800 million by government to enable GATT to invest in the first 4 banks: ADB, Omni Basic, Prudential, and Universal Merchant Bank, UMB. And a subsequent raising of amount of up to 800 million from investors, backed by a full call option from government to enable GATT to proceed with the original structure as planned, but via preference shares. Accordingly, Parliament is therefore requested to approve the 800 million initial capitalization of GATT for investment in the 4 participating banks under the new structure and the PCOA. The PCOA will replace the sovereign guarantee that was previously approved for the banks. National Investment Bank. Mr. Speaker, government took a decision to deal with NIB separately from the other 4 participating banks because of a unique challenge and the fact that it was 100% owned by the state. Over the past months, government has worked to strengthen the management, ensure regulatory compliance, and beef up the financial reporting framework of the bank to enable it to participate more effectively under the GATT program. The bank also took steps to engage new auditors and make current their financial statement. Additionally, to address severe liquidity challenges, government in October 2019 entered into a swap arrangement with NIB with respect to the Nestle shares, giving NIB 500 million Ghana cedis of new liquidity for the Nestle shares. The final assessment of the bank, however, showed a much wider capital shortfall, 2 billion as at the end of 2018, which it will need to raise to enable it to meet the new Bank of Ghana minimal capital requirement. NIB, under the GATT initiative, has also developed a new strategy that will transform it into a specialized bank. Going forward, NIB shall focus on promoting industrialization by deploying the right products and services to finance industry across the country and in line with national development priorities. In this regard, Parliament is requested to approve a 2.2 billion put call option from government to GAT to enable the raise the required funding for NIB via preference shares. This will replace the government guarantee to GAT that was previously approved. Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited. Mr. Speaker, Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited, which was formed as a bridge bank to assume that the good assets of the 7 defunct local banks in August 2018, has made considerable progress in terms of paying depositors whose monies were locked up with these institutions and still maintaining most of them as clients. The progress made by CBG, the jobs retained, as well as the rehiring of some of the staff of the now defunct banks that were out of jobs, attest to the hard work of the Bank of Ghana. The receivers and all stakeholders in the banking sector cleanup process to ensure that the resolution of the crisis was as smooth as possible. We are confident that next month the financial sector, which is now on a sounder footing, will expand considerably and new jobs will be created. With the progress made by CBG, the bank has requested that government consider and approve for its articles of incorporation to be amended to convert it into a normal universal bank and not a bridge bank. Government has recognized the need to strengthen CBG and protect the jobs of this bank and has therefore given the go-ahead for CBG to undertake the needed regulatory process with the Bank of Ghana for it to be regularized. Changing the environment for private sector credit. Mr. Speaker, government has worked very hard to reverse the deteriorating macroeconomic environment it inherited, reduce inflation and interest rates, stabilize the exchange rate, restored sanity in the financial sector, and undertook large-scale social intervention programs in education, smallholder agriculture initiatives such as planting and rearing for food and jobs, among others, which are prerequisites for private sector-led growth and job creation. Mr. Speaker, from 2020, government will begin major interventions to boost private sector credit to support all segments of the business community. In 2019, government engaged many stakeholders with respect to access to credit for the private sector. Experts went across the length and breadth of the country to meet with SMEs and artisans, proprietors and associations to get a better understanding of the challenges they face in accessing credit, while the ministry also engaged the AGI Bankers Association, among others, prior to this year's budget. Through evidence-based research and field engagement with over 40 business associations, credit needs of micro, small, and medium enterprises in the country, government is ready to take advantage of the macro gains and enhance social cohesion through our social intervention initiative to focus on private sector growth, home ownership, and infrastructure development, including toll roads. The key institutions to anchor this shift will be the National Development Bank, the Enterprise Credit Scheme, and the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. In this regard, the following initiatives will be undertaken in 2020. Establishment of Enterprise Credit Scheme, ECS. Mr. Speaker, we would like to emphasize that the ultimate solution to the job creation lies with the private sector. The private sector in Ghana continues to borrow at over 25%, while their competitors elsewhere are borrowing at least 25%. One way to support them is to ensure a reasonable level of lending rates. Mr. Speaker, government is therefore working together with the banking community to launch a 2 billion credit and guarantee scheme in 2020. This initiative will be structured to incentivize banks to lend to private sector at discounted lending rates. The scheme, which will start in the first quarter of 2020, will be targeted at specific industries such as agribusiness, manufacturing, hospitality, and tourism, and the tech sector, among others, with entrepreneurs. Promotion of micro businesses and household lending. Government will partner with fintech companies, local banks, and mobile money operators to deliver microcredit to Ghanaian businesses and individuals. This intervention is expected to deliver quick loans on favorable terms using technology-driven platforms to do the credit assessment. This initiative is in line with government's digitization agenda and offers an opportunity for MSMEs to apply for loans on their mobile phones with minimal human intervention. The initiative will go live in the first quarter of 2020. The benefits of this intervention includes the provision of needed microcapital for business expansion and capital expenditure. It will also support the working capital needs of small Ghanaian businesses. Our market women will be able to access credit using their mobile money wallets to stock up goods in order to sell more. The initiative is expected to increase productivity and profitability as well as contribute to job creation. This is in direct response to our findings from our nationwide survey. To encourage the establishment of private equity, venture capital, and mutual funds, which will improve the ecosystem for startups, the current application VAT on management fees for these funds will be abolished, as this discourages institutional and angel investors, both local and foreign, from investing in such critical funds for private sector growth. This will improve the accumulation of long-term funds in the economy to support growth and jobs. National Development Bank. Mr. Speaker, feasibility study for the establishment of National Development Bank specifying the rationale, mandate, business model, legal and regulatory framework, ownership, governance, and sustainability of the bank has been completed. Government is working with the World Bank and other development partners to capitalize the bank in early 2020 for it to commence operations. The National Development Bank, as envisioned, will refinance credit to industry and agriculture as a wholesale bank and also provide guarantee instruments to encourage universal banks to lend to these specific sectors of the economy. The National Development Bank will be an independent institution with strong corporate governance framework and will be globally rated to enable it to leverage foreign private capital for industrial and agricultural development in the country. The government will also provide periodic dedicated funds for intervention in key areas of the economy, such as large-scale agro-processing, housing, through various schemes and funds as needed for economic and social development and jobs. It is expected, Mr. Speaker, that the National Development Bank will provide cheaper and long-term funding for the growth and expansion of key companies operating in the agri and industry sectors. The Development Bank will also lend through specialized banks to key anchor industries at the metropolitan, metropolis, and district assembly level to support the government's 1D, 1F initiative. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of the free senior high school policy, which provides opportunities for Ghanaian youth to gain access to secondary education, has recorded significant enrollment numbers since its inception. The total number of beneficiaries for the two cohorts has almost doubled, from 400,000 in 2017 to 794,899 students at the end of 2018-19 academic year, and it is projected to increase to 1.264 million in 2020. Mr. Speaker, government will continue to invest in the education sector by providing adequate infrastructure, improving appropriate regulatory systems, and incessantly building the capacity of teachers across the country to enhance quality human capacity development. We will fast-track the construction of about 960 structures, including classroom blocks, dormitories, and auxiliary facilities in secondary schools across the country to ease congestion in our schools. Our other focus is on the expansion and upgrading of public tertiary institutions to absorb the high growth in student numbers. True to our commitment to prioritizing technical education, this week work has begun on the most comprehensive expansion and retooling exercise ever undertaken in this country's history involving technical institutions. The previous government had negotiated a contract with ABIC International Holdings, which we took over and completely renegotiated to gain greater value for money, getting more for even less money. The contract is to build state-of-the-art training workshops for 15 institutions and a technical examination unit equipped with sets of laboratory equipment for electrical and electronic laboratory, mechanical engineering laboratory, civil engineering laboratory, automotive repair engineering laboratory, and welding equipment laboratory. Mr. Speaker, in line of our commitment to giving value for money, I'm happy to announce that the contract sum has dropped from $190 million US dollars to $105 million, representing a savings of $14 million. Furthermore, our negotiations have led to the number of polytechnics to benefit increasing from 5 polytechnics to 10 technical universities/polytechnics. Again, the number of technical institutes to benefit has gone up from 10 to 13. The completion time has also been shortened from 36 months to 30 months, and we have added 3 years extra to the 2 years after sales service support and warranty originally negotiated by the NDC. Mr. Speaker, when the NPP government assumed administration of our beloved country, one of the biggest surprises we faced as government was the dire state of the financial sector, which was in array. Mr. Speaker, as noted, we have spent close to $13 billion. GAT has performed its work. The National Development Bank will be operational next year, as we have secured $250 million from the World Bank for that. Mr. Speaker, the Nation Builders Corps and the Planting for Food and Jobs program have both been very successful in generating employment and contributing to improved livelihoods for many Ghanaians. The government employed and employed over 97,000 in 7 modules of NAPCO across the country. The PHF program has also contributed significantly to the 2019 year crop yield, with maize yield increasing by 29.2%, rice by 53.8%, sorghum by 13.3%, and soya beans by 67%, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, given the significant contributions of the various government flagship programs to job creation and livelihood improvement, government will continue to invest in sectors that seek to provide support for the poor and the vulnerable in order to improve the lives of our people. As such, the delivery of priority infrastructure projects under the IPEP will be fast-tracked in 2020. We will continue to deliver projects such as rural markets, community clinics, toilet facilities, community portable water systems, and classroom blocks to improve the living standards of our people. Mr. Speaker, the 2020 projects are designed to consolidate the gains we have made in the last 3 years. Mr. Speaker, we will continue with our 16 flagship programs in order to transform the lives of Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, we are confident that as a result of the academic intervention programs we have rolled up, the success rate will be high to prove the skeptics wrong. The graduates will be ready to enter our tertiary institutions as well as join other internship programs on our business development programs to enable them start their own businesses. In 2020, government will continue with the payment of allowances to a projected number of 54,000 teacher trainees in all and 49,000 nursing trainees. Mr. Speaker, under the Agri Modernization Program, government will continue to supply organic and inorganic fertilizers and improve seeds to about 1.2 million farmers. The seeds and fertilizers are expected to significantly again increase the production of maize, rice, soya, sorghum, cowpea, groundnut cassava, sweet potato, and assorted vegetables. In addition, Government will continue to maintain surveillance to keep pests under control, to ensure food security, and provide enhanced extension services to farmers. In 2020, government will continue to provide agricultural machinery and equipment, including simple handheld farm equipment, to improve small-scale farmer access to agricultural mechanization services. Government will also complete the importation on assorted agricultural machinery for the establishment of agricultural mechanization service centers. Mr. Speaker, government will focus on identifying, supporting private sector business operators in the remaining 150 districts to expand the 1D1F program to districts where no promoter has shown interest as yet. Mr. Speaker, the National Entrepreneurship Program under the Green Business Initiative, which is being implemented by NIC, will train 15,000 entrepreneurs, out of which 4,000 will be financially supported under the Presidential Business Support. Security. Mr. Speaker, in order to ensure that the country enjoys peace, especially before and after the 2020 elections, the Ghana Police Service will commence the construction of 70 prefabricated operational centers to improve community policing and provide additional accommodation, operational vehicles, equipment, and other logistics to ensure efficient service delivery. Government and faith-based organization collaboration. Mr. Speaker, faith-based organizations are key partners of government and national development. They significantly influence areas including education, health, social justice, and the preservation of morality and ethics. Access to nationwide networks and a proven track record, faith-based organizations are well positioned to inform policy development and expedite delivery of social infrastructure and services. Successful discussions will help the community of faith-based organizations towards a comprehensive social partnership framework to realize holistic governance and carve out a value-based national identity. The collaboration will uphold foundational laws and address mutual concerns, including attitudinal change, tackling corruption, social protection for the vulnerable, civic education, tax sensitization, resource management and skills development, entrepreneurship and creativity, and a national dialogue on values and ethics. A memorandum of understanding has been prepared to this effect with inputs from faith-based organizations, and the collaboration is set to be launched before the end of the year. Mr. Speaker, the interdenominational national cathedral that will be located in the heart of the capital stands to help unify the Christian community as a place of worship and promote the national conversation on the role of faith in building Ghana. With the participation of various churches and administration of the cathedral, collective ownership of the project by the churches is envisioned. The Board of Trustees and the Secretariat have been established, and preparatory work for the construction of the cathedral have begun. Procurement processes to select the contractor are expected to conclude by the end of the year, and construction is expected to begin in March 2020. As part of government efforts to reduce regional disparities and bring service closer to the people, government will complete the following projects in 2020. Regional Hospital in Kumasi and 4 district hospitals for staff housing at Chifu Proso, Konongo, Dumasi, Tepa, and Ekoko. The 5 district hospital, Upper East Bolgatanga Regional Hospital, and Greater Accra Regional Hospital, Ridge Phase 2. Mr. Speaker, the construction of the following facilities will continue. 80% completion on the construction of 5 district hospitals in Sola, Tolon, Somanya, Wepi, and Wita, and a polyclinic in Bamboy. 40% completion of maternity and children's block at Kompanoche Hospital in the Ashanti region. 35% completion on the construction of 1 district hospital and 5 polytechnics in the western region, Kontombra, Bogoso, Lunkwa, Mpoho, Elubu, and Nswam. 60% completion of the expansion and equipping of 4 selected facilities at Aburi, Kibi, Atibie, and Mampo. Work also commenced on the following projects in 2020: construction of Koforidua Regional Hospital, achieved 30% completion; construction of University of Ghana Teaching Hospital, Phase 2; construction of maternity block at Kolebu Teaching Hospital; reconstruction of Tema Regional Hospital; reconstruction of the Central Medical Store; rehabilitation and expansion of Shama and La General Polyclinic, and achieved 30% completion; refurbishment of the surgical block of Kolebu Teaching Hospital; construction of urology and nephrology center at Kolebu Teaching Hospital; construction of Western Regional Hospital at Sekandi Takrade; construction of 4 number 60-bed district hospital at Ebubu, Sampa, and Sandema; construction of 10 40-bed hospitals at Shanti and Eastern regions; construction of new district hospital at Boise and trauma hospital in Yinam. In 2020, the drone project will be rolled out nationwide to ensure that essential services such as blood and medical products delivery are extended to deprived areas of the country. Transforming Ghana beyond aid. Mr. Speaker, building on the progress we have made so far, including on the flagship programs, government will continue to take deliberate and strategic steps to accelerate Ghana's economic transformation. Our goal, consistent with the medium-term aspiration of the coordinated program, is to use our resources creatively and efficiently to build, and I quote, a prosperous and self-confident Ghana that is in charge of her economic destiny, a transformed Ghana that is prosperous enough to be beyond needing aid, and that engages competitively with the rest of the world through trade and investment. Mr. Speaker, under the Ghana Beyond Aid agenda, we aim for an accelerated economic transformation based on rapid and inclusive growth that will double our per capita income over a 10-year period. Mr. Speaker, the accelerated transformation we seek cannot be realized if we do business as usual. We must increase government capacity to finance and manage the ambitious agenda that we have set for ourselves, and also radically improve the environment for private sector, both domestic and foreign, to invest and do business in our country. Mr. Speaker, we need to significantly increase domestic revenue in order to raise our contribution to financing our ambitious development agenda. Government has therefore developed a strategy to address this situation and to increase our tax to GDP ratio. Mr. Speaker, the higher public investment in human capital infrastructure that increase domestic revenue will help us finance the building blocks. But we are the first to recognize that for the private sector, both domestic and foreign, to invest and sustain the investment in Ghana economy, there is need to improve business environment, and we will continue to work on this and offer the critical support needed for the private sector to achieve and thrive. Mr. Speaker, to this end, government has introduced the Business Regulatory Reform Program, which is a 3-year program initiative that Ministry of Trade and GIPC will support. Mr. Speaker, according to the BOG and BOP records, FDI flows into Ghana from 2016 and 2018 average 2.9 billion a year. As a percentage of GDP, this equates to around 5%. I have no doubt that Ghana is well positioned to become the #1 destination for FDI flows in the medium to long term for a host of reasons, including its location, literacy rate, English language, rule of law, strong macroeconomic fundamentals, stable and peaceful democracy, warm climate, and warm hospitality. Added to this, Mr. Speaker, is the choice of Ghana to host the Secretariat of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Mr. Speaker, as such, we are putting together a comprehensive strategy to harness and attract FDI to help accelerate growth. We believe that if we can double every year For the next 10 years, it shall translate into increase in GDP growth of over current GDP projection of approximately an additional 6% annually over the medium term. I'm happy to announce that Cabinet has approved the formation of an interministerial committee, including the Ministry of Agriculture, the Minister of Trade and Industry, Ghana Investment Promotion Center, and the Ministry of Finance to provide policy guidance for the FDI agenda. Mr. Speaker, in fact, we're already beginning to leverage our advantage to generate a lot of interest in Ghana from global multinational companies. We have so far attracted investment and commercial interest from global automotive companies, including Toyota, Volkswagen, Nissan, Renault, Hyundai, Sinotruk, and Suzuki. Mr. Speaker, various strategic partnerships are also being forged. The Africa Investment Forum, Compact with Africa, the US Prosper Africa, the UK Ghana Business Council, the EU Africa Business, China's FOCAC, Japan's TCAD, Korea's COAFAC, and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and Singapore, among others. Mr. Speaker, all these measures on the business regulatory environment and the FDI agenda are part of a broader, ambitious strategy to make Ghana a gateway to business in Africa, the business, financial, and logistics hub in the region. Mr. Speaker, for government, one of the cardinal principles in our economic transformation is to leverage technology wherever possible to innovate. There is no doubt that government, in partnership with the private sector, is on the right path towards digitizing government services to expedite delivery of services, improve the life of citizens, and promote a supportive environment. We have therefore, since 2017, sought to formalize the Ghanaian society by leveraging technology and digitization to improve administrative systems and increase transparency. Mr. Speaker, please permit me to list the following. The introduction of the national ID card is a game changer. On digital property addressing, the process of tagging all 4 million houses with digital addresses is ongoing. The introduction of paperless post systems. Driver's licenses and vehicle registration have been digitized. Mobile money payments interoperability has been implemented. The Registrar General Department has been digitized. Passport applications are online, and together with the national ID cards are eliminating the falsification of records and multiple identities. Renewal of NHIS registration via mobile phone has been a phenomenal innovation. Drones and decentralized delivery of health services. Ghana has joined Rwanda in using drones to deliver critical medical products. Land digitization of blockchain technology. These innovations are intended to improve the overall platform and the ways and means by which citizens, businesses, and the public sector conduct their activities. Citizen to citizen, business to citizen, government to citizen, and vice versa. Mr. Speaker, there are substantial benefits in all these measures for good governance and for sound management of the economy. Building these types of information infrastructure will also help expand the tax base of the economy to improve domestic revenue mobilization, a key pillar of Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. Mr. Speaker, soon our national life will be infused with current technology spanning national identification, digital postal, e-banking, link passport, driver's license, pension and insurance data, digital land registry, mobile money interoperability systems, among others. We have set a digitization agenda to improve the efficiency of many government agencies. These initiatives for potential long-term gains by leveraging technology to improve transparency and accountability. Mr. Speaker, this is the way to go for Ghana if we are to catch up with the rest of the developed world in the fourth industrial revolution. Ghana is ready and pushing hard on this path. Ultimately, our goal is to become the leading hub in ICT innovation in Africa. Mr. Speaker, In pursuit of this, government will set up a national digital strategy team under the overall oversight of the presidency, who will bring together local technology firms and experts, and with the professional and financial support from the Ministry of Communication, Ministry of Finance, and the Ghana Investment Promotion Center to elevate the profile and reach of our digitalization strategy across the region to unlock the unexplored economic value of the sector. Mr. Speaker, entrepreneurship. Government will accelerate entrepreneurship and MSC growth to support economic growth and dynamism. Mr. Speaker, entrepreneurship support programs such as MBSSI and NIIP. In addition, government will facilitate linkages between domestic entrepreneurs and FDI firms to join global value chains. Mr. Speaker, recent studies conducted by the World Bank Group indicates that 200 million people worldwide, disproportionately the youth, are unemployed and looking for jobs. 600 million new jobs are needed globally over the next 15 years to keep employment rates stable, and 1 billion young people will enter the labor market between 2019 and 2030. The creation of jobs and connecting to markets, as well as building capabilities and connecting workers to jobs, are policy drivers for our TVET program. Mr. Speaker, government will over the medium term establish 32 new state-of-the-art TVET institutions across the country to ensure that our youth are ready for the job market. Accelerated infrastructure development. Mr. Speaker, infrastructure development is a long-term commitment which requires long-term financing. We will aggressively pursue blended financing arrangements, leveraging sources from various development partners, philanthropy, private sector actors to finance mega infrastructure projects. Seaports and airports to position Ghana as a regional logistics hub, road network in the country, metro and light rail transit systems in Accra and Kumasi. Science and technology. Mr. Speaker, the foundation for entrepreneurship in science and technology. Technological capability is a differentiator between developed countries and developing countries. Mr. Speaker, towards this objective, MESTI will establish the DDMC to ensure that our technology is up to speed with first world. Public service delivery. To achieve the delivery of these reforms and initiatives, government will also improve the efficiency of the public service delivery by strengthening automation of administrative services, enhance capacity for service delivery, and support digitization of government's operation, including digital record keeping. Mr. Speaker, conclusion. Mr. Speaker, many children, Mr. Speaker, thousands of aged and vulnerable others with no work and no income. This government has thankfully extended the LEAD program for over 150,000 people. Many children went hungry at school, and thankfully we have expanded the school feeding program by 500,000 people. Thousands of our soldiers deployed for peacekeeping were not going to have the kind of motivation they needed, and peacekeeping allowance have been expanded from $31 a day to $35 per day. Tens of thousands of individuals were going to be taxed out of business with nuisance taxes, and these were abolished. While the average annual increase in electricity between 2010 and 2015 was 45%, there has been a net reduction in electricity tariffs. Thousands of pensions with disability have had their allocations from District Assembly Common Fund increased by 50%. We have also ensured the implementation of our pledge of employing 50% of the persons who manage the country's toll bridges. To address the problem of lack of ambulances, the Speaker, 307 well-equipped ambulances for the National Ambulance Service under One Constituency, One Ambulance Initiative has occurred. By these interventions, Mr. Speaker, we have put monies either directly or indirectly into the pockets of many Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, from 2017 to date, these interventions by government have put at least 12.2 billion in the pockets of Ghanaians. Specifically, 3SHS has saved parents a total of 1.8 billion Ghana cedis over the last 3 years, and that's money in their pockets. Planting for Food and Jobs has saved farmers a total of 844 million cedis over the last 3 years for certified fertilizer, and this is money in their pocket. A total of 357 million have been put into the pockets of teacher trainees within the last 3 years in the form allowances, and this is money in their pockets. A total of 336 million Ghana cedis have been put into the pockets of nursing trainees within the last 3 years in the form of allowances, and this is money in their pockets. Subsidy for VEC registration fee has saved parents a total of 65 million Ghana cedis over the last 2 years, and that is money in their pockets. The electricity tariff reduction affected by periods effective March 15, 2018 resulted in savings of 1.8 billion per year for residential and non-residential customers, and this is money in their pockets. The reduction and abolition of taxes, including the 50% reduction in import duty, has saved taxpayers a total of 4.1 billion over the last 3 years, and this is money in their pockets. There are over 350,000 jobs that have been created in the public sector, including 100,000 NAPO graduates, has provided total earnings to them of 2.9 billion Ghana cedis, and that's money in their pockets. Mr. Speaker, the question that should be asked is, what social interventions? Mr. Speaker, the question that should be asked is, what social interventions did the NDC implement in their 8 years in office to reduce the suffering of Ghanaians? Mr. Speaker, we should also not forget that government has, through the financial sector cleanup, saved the deposits of 4.6 million depositors who would otherwise lose their deposits. Mr. Speaker, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, who together produce 67% of the world cocoa, have agreed on a framework for setting floor prices for cocoa. This is a game changer in the cocoa industry and will result in a major transformation in the fortunes of cocoa farmers from October 2020. They will receive higher prices for their cocoa through the living income differential. Mr. Speaker, furthermore, the government of Nana Akufo-Addo campaigned on building a more inclusive society where every community has equal opportunity in getting access to basic infrastructure and services like water, toilets, markets, education, and health. This is the rationale behind the launching of the IPEP initiative. Mr. Speaker, the results the last 3 years have been impressive. Thousands of projects, some completed and some ongoing across the 275 constituencies. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to announce that preparations are now complete and the construction of the first 600-bed Kaya hostel will commence in Agogloshi next month to provide accommodation and skill training to these vulnerable young women. Mr. Speaker, to address the inclusion of inner city and Zongo communities, the President established a Ministry of Inner City and Zongo Development, as well as the Zongo Development Fund. Many project interventions have been made in the last 2 years. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we are all witness to the success of our Planting for Food and Jobs program. We have between 2007 and 2018 a total subsidy in the form of 12,000 metric tons of organic and 821,000 metric tons of blended in-ground fertilizer, as well as 24,000 metric tons of improved seed valued at 0.6 billion cedis were provided to about 1.9 million farmers. Mr. Speaker, government's industrial development agenda is anchored on the One District, One Factory initiative, a program designed to support the private sector to establish at least one industrial enterprise in each of the 260 districts. Much has been achieved, and we are on to the last 150 to work on. To date, 181 projects are at various levels of implementation spread over 110 districts. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, this August House therefore approved the following tax incentives to the private sector business promoters. 5 years corporate tax holiday for 1 year on companies, exemption from import duties, taxes and levies on equipment, machinery and parts, exemption from payment of duties and levies on raw materials. Mr. Speaker, beyond 1D1F, the Strategic Outdoor Industries Initiative is one of the key components of our industrial transformation plan to diversify our economy. The key strategic industries under the initiative are petrochemical, aluminum and bauxite, iron and steel, vehicle assembly, automotive industry, garment and textiles, pharmaceutical, vegetable oils and fats, industrial starch from cassava, industrial chemical based on industrial salt, machinery and equipment manufacturing. Mr. Speaker, the introduction of mobile money payments and interoperability between different telcos, as well as between mobile wallets and bank accounts, has been implemented. This is a major step to financial inclusion and movement towards cashless payment for government services from next year. The interoperability between mobile wallets and bank accounts that we have implemented in Ghana is the first of its kind in Africa and practically provides all 34.5 million mobile money account holders a branchless bank account. This is real change. Mr. Speaker, the process of registering businesses has also been simplified and digitized. Mr. Speaker, digitization has also introduced in the courts through the implementation of an electronic justice system that allows the automated serving of court processes with speed and ease. Mr. Speaker, the introduction of the People Court system has reduced the time to clear goods. Mr. Speaker, for the first time ever, through the collaborative efforts of different agencies, particularly BRI, of CSIR, government launched a comprehensive building code for Ghana in 2018, which is available online at the Ghana Standards Authority website. This will enhance standardization, quality, and reduce cost. Mr. Speaker, to deepen and decentralize governance and enhance peace, we have created 6 new regions. We are proceeding with a referendum and some other amendments to elect MMDCs. We have settled the long-running chieftaincy dispute in Dakon. We have appointed a special prosecutor for corruption, and we have passed into law the Right to Information Bill, which has been on the radar for the last 20 years. Mr. Speaker, any objective observer will agree that this is a remarkable set of achievements in just under 3 years. However, there's still more to be done. Today, the cry everywhere is about the poor state of our roads. It is an unprecedented cry, and it makes you wonder where all the roads in the NDC Green Book are. Mr. Speaker, this is why we are going to focus more on fixing our roads across the country in 2020 and beyond, to get the road sector moving and contractors back to work. Mr. Speaker, to get the road sector moving and contractors back to work, government will pay 80% of all contractors. Mr. Speaker, we have identified critical roads across each of the 60 regions, and construction will begin on all these critical roads. Cocoa Board has also secured funds to continue ongoing and new cocoa roads. Work on these roads will also commence soon. As part of our new initiative to complement the traditional execution of road projects, we have launched, Mr. Speaker, the Accelerated Community Road Improvement Initiative. Just yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the 48th Engineers Regiment of the Ghana Armed Forces has started work in Soweto and were able, Mr. Speaker, within a day to do over 4 kilometers of road. Mr. Speaker, the first phase of the Tano Hydro arrangement is finally taking off. We have also been able to mobilize financing for over 150 other roads nationwide. Mr. Speaker, Ghanaians want action on our roads, not words or plans, but what has been done. We intend to swing into action, and the work has already begun so that the talking will cease. Mr. Speaker, with this large number of roads to be constructed, the year 2020 can aptly be described as the year of roads, along with a focus on all flagship projects. Mr. Speaker, it is clear from the foregoing that the government of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has worked hard over the last 3 years to deliver a substantial number of remarkable achievements which we are going to consolidate going forward. By way of summary and emphasis, I would like to mention some of these achievements. Mr. Speaker, in the last 32 months, we have doubled the rate of economic growth to make Ghana one of the fastest growing economies in the world. We have expanded food production to make Ghana self-sufficient in maize production through planting for food and jobs. We have also introduced and implemented REM for food and jobs to develop the livestock industry. Together with Côte d'Ivoire, we have reached a landmark agreement to have a floor price for cocoa and an extra $400 per ton. We have passed a fiscal responsibility act to entrench fiscal discipline. We have reduced the fiscal deficit. We have established a fiscal council. We have issued a Eurobond with the largest tenor issuance, the largest subscription. We have reduced the rate of debt accumulation. We have reduced the overall tax burden of Ghanaians. We have reduced benchmark values by 50%. We have reduced inflation to its lowest in 27 years. We have reduced bank lending rates. We have cleaned up the mess we inherited in the financial sector. We have saved the deposits of some 4.6 million depositors. We have established a Financial Stability Council. We have attained a straight surplus for the first time in over 20 years. We have reduced our current account deficits. We have increased Ghana's import cover of larger foreign exchange reserves. We have reduced the rate of depreciation of the city. Under our watch, Ghana has become the top destination for foreign direct investment. We have, Mr. Speaker, we have successfully exited the IMF program that we inherited from the NDC. We have improved Ghana's sovereign credit rating with the first rating upgrade in more than a decade. Capitalization grant. We have expanded the school feeding program. We have expanded LEAP. We have established a nation builder score and recruited 100,000 graduates. We have purchased 567 vehicles and 3 helicopters for the police. We have launched a nationwide emergency 112 number for the police. We have implemented a new basic curriculum for kindergarten to primary school. We have redefined basic education. We have redefined basic education to include senior high school and technical school. We are absorbing the cost of WASSCE registration fees for students. We have restored teacher training allowance. We have procured ambulances for all constituencies. We are constructing curfew instances, we've established 75 greenhouses at Dawinya. Mr. Speaker, through our private-public partnership with Novartis, government is offering the drug hydroxyurea to relieve the pain and suffering of sickle cell patients in Ghana. This is the first such initiative in Africa. We have increased the DACF to persons with disability by 50%. We have established the first government adult shelter to support victims of human trafficking. We have increased peacekeeping allowances. We have established and implemented the National Entrepreneur and Innovation Program. We have established the Dongo Development Fund. We have brought transparency in the allocation of oil blocks. We have established and funded the Office of the Special Prosecutor. We have passed the Rights Information Act. Ghana has been elected. Ghana, Mr. Speaker, has been elected to host the Secretariat of the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement. We have established the 3 development authorities. Mr. Speaker, we have implemented mobile money interoperability. We have introduced a digital license. We have introduced online renewal of NHIS registration. Our hospital processes are being automated. We have implemented an e-procurement at the Public Procurement Authority. Mr. Speaker, we have on course to establish a vibrant domestic automotive industry. The Accra-Tama railway line is now in operation, and the Kodukrom, Takwa, and Achimota and Sawan lines have also been rehabilitated. We launched the Year of Return to mark the 400th anniversary of the first slave taking from Africa to the Americas. It has resulted in increased tourism. We are constructing a dry bulk jetty as well as a multi-purpose container terminal at Takoradi. The construction, Mr. Speaker, of Tamale Airport Phase 2 has started. Tamale Interchange is being constructed. Kokwasi Interchange is being constructed. Tema Motorway Interchange is being constructed. Ubecha Binamte Interchange is being constructed. We have commenced airline operations to WAC. We have 5 Anglo-Atlantic and Kukumo people to work. We have commenced the journey to build the National Cathedral. We have established social partnerships. We have launched a comprehensive building code for Ghana for the first time. Mr. Speaker, the last 3 years has been remarkable, and we are grateful to God and the good citizens of Ghana for what we have achieved. Going forward, we will consolidate against May and pursue our transformation at Ghana, so help us God. Yes, Mr. Speaker, as we push, Mr. Speaker, as we push on in the knowledge as we push on, Mr. Speaker, as we push on in the knowledge that Ghanaians will know that we mean well, we do well, and that by the grace of the Almighty, we shall all proclaim with one loud voice in melodic unison that one good term of Akuswado will deserve another. Will deserve another term. One good term who deserve another tear. Mr. Speaker, the Lord has indeed laid the foundation. The Lord has indeed laid the foundation for our country, and Mr. Speaker, His hands will complete it. The way forward, Mr. Speaker, requires bold and courageous leadership, and this government has exhibited such mettle. Mr. Speaker, the boldness of the free SHS program, the boldness of the banking sector reform, the boldness of the renegotiation of the energy sector, the new Ghana Ivory Coast declared floor price for cocoa, the boldness of the termination of the PDS contract, and the boldness of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. My fellow Ghanaians, we must, we must go forth together. Let us break, fellow Ghanaians, disunity and poverty with a rod of iron. Let us go forward with a spirit of power, love, and self-discipline. Mr. Speaker, we are all growing old. And we need to shout for joy to the Lord. Yeah? For the Lord is good and His love endures forever. Now, Mr. Speaker, what was remarkable for me on that day was when I met Dr. Ajepon Yamwa, who told me, Mr. Speaker, about his granddaughter who had just born. Mr. Speaker, who had just won the Queen's Commonwealth Community Essay. Mr. Speaker. So I went, Mr. Speaker, to look at what she had written for this glory to come to Ghana. And Mr. Speaker, she had written a poem which said, this is Mr. Speaker, this is a 12-year-old. Ghana, I am connected to you indeed. Mr. Speaker, and this is what she said. Ever since we gained independence, we have been proud, we have been happy, we have been well-mannered, we are noble citizens. I am proud of my homeland. I am proud of my motherland, Ghana. We face neither to the east or north, but we face forth. Mr. Speaker, this is a 12-year-old with faith and hope in our country. Mr. Speaker, this is a 12-year-old with faith in our country. Mr. Speaker, we need to move forward together and break the disunity and poverty with a rod of iron. Mr. Speaker, we need to build a consensus on a wide web of issues so there is optimism in the future, there is social mobility for all, and a new center of trust. Mr. Speaker, this 2020 budget, Mr. Speaker, assures us of a stable and there are no new taxes. Our roads will be built. We shall strengthen partnership with labor. Employers and faith-based organizations will be our partners. Lending rates will come down. The National Development Bank and the Enterprise Credit System will finance industry, businesses, mortgages, and entrepreneurs. We shall indeed consolidate our gains for growth, jobs, and prosperity for all. Mr. Speaker, let us all rise and build together. Mr. Speaker, I submit to you, Mr. Speaker, that in Kosovo and in Kabul, I submit to you, Mr. Speaker, that in Kosovo and in Kabul budget. Mr. Speaker,
please avoid anything that is non-parliamentary.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I submit to you the Kosovo and the common budget. A country united in one direction. God bless us all. God bless our homeland Ghana. Right Reverend, Right Honorable Speaker, I so move.